All right. Hello. Good afternoon, or I guess it's morning where I am still. It's afternoon where you are. I am Dante King, and I'm the author of Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, White Psychopathology, Collective Psychosis, and Trauma in America. So you can, if you haven't heard me or heard about me or my work, you can go to danteking.com and follow me. I am joined here today by the I almost said the master, and then I thought about,
Don't say that.
hmm, let me not call Pastor Ben Boswell, anti-racism practitioner, the master or the master pastor. So, hey, Ben, it's great to see you.
It's so good to be here. It's so good to chat and catch up. I'm the Ben Boswell, pastor in Charlotte and author of Confronting Whiteness. Happy to be here with you, Dante, and it is afternoon here.
That is wonderful, my friend. It is great to see you, to be here with you doing this. Pastor Ben Boswell and myself, we met at a conference, a global anti-racism summit that was recently held in South Africa at the beginning of October. And I just have to say, it was one of the most sacred, affirming experiences that I've ever had. It's the best summit or conference I've ever attended in my life. But meeting you, Ben, was just extraordinary, because prior to meeting you, I hadn't met anyone who had really at least uncovered and framed for me the history of Christian supremacy, and how that influenced Anglo supremacy and then white supremacy, and the ties that you made, and just how deep you went. So I am forever grateful for you,
Thank you.
for the opportunity to meet you.
Well, the pleasure was mine, and it probably was at the height of my game because you went first on the day that we presented, and your lecture, your presentation was so strong and so clear. If you've never heard Dante present, you have to find a time to hear Dante present. And it energized me. It was like iron sharpening iron, and gave me a kind of permission to feel like I could be my full self and go all the way there in my presentation. And that's why at the end of the day, folks were like, shaken by your presentation and my presentation on the same day, which I know Edwin did on purpose, diabolical that he is on those things.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was amazing to meet you.
Thank you, my friend, my brother. So while at the summit, we broke a lot of bread, had some drinks to try to process and also take care of ourselves. And while sitting at one of the tables, we started talking about what it would mean and how it might feel for us to go live together sometimes, because we were both talking about how exhausted really we are, just within our society today. You see the news, you see television shows, you see talk shows, news, and there are all sorts of people being covered who go on these programs, and they start talking about how unprecedented this moment is, because everything is either breaking news or it's unprecedented. And we started talking about the ways that word has been corrupted, and it's also being used in a very disingenuous fashion. So did you want to add anything to that? Talk about it?
Yeah, I think the more I've thought about that conversation we had, the more I've thought we needed to get on together on live and really unpack the impact that word is having, and what that word, the use of that word, and how it's proliferated in our society now, what that says about who we are and how we got to where we are, and how we talk about what's happening, and how the way that we talk about what's happening is not just rhetoric and words, but in fact, sometimes reinforces the very thing that we are trying to describe. It actually gives it more power when we use this word. The word unprecedented every day on the news, someone says this now. You know, right now here in Charlotte, we're preparing for the Border Patrol to arrive here, coming from Chicago, and before that in LA. And on the nightly news, just last week, someone said it is unprecedented for the Border Patrol to come to Charlotte, North Carolina. And so this word is being thrown around, and it's actually, the way I think about it, it's a very it's a soft word. You know, I think the people who are using it think they're using it in a way that is dramatic, right? For a dramatic effect, but it's actually kind of soft. It's not very descriptive, and it's often not true. As you said, it's very disingenuous.
Right. So we thought that we would come together and really unpack, you know, how this word is being manipulated, how it's being used. So we're going to come and do just maybe 20 to 30, maybe sometimes 40-minute snippets of videos on a live stream to really challenge the overutilization and misuse of that word. And so we'll be taking different or various current events and linking them to history and talking about how none of this is unprecedented. It's actually, we're in what I would frame as more relaxed times compared to the history of this country and all that has happened within it. So we're going to start off. I'm going to start off by sharing a quick video. We're going to start off by sharing a quick video, which is just an example, and it features Bernie Sanders using this word. All right, here we go.
Thanks very much for joining me. We are living in a dangerous and unprecedented moment in American history. And I'm getting a lot of calls from people who are not only upset about what's happening, but are wondering how we best go forward. Well, let me tell you, we've got to be smart, we've got to be organized, and we've got to fight back. This is not a time for wallowing in despair and hiding under the covers. The stakes are just too high.
So Ben, what do you think Mr. Sanders means by we're living in an unprecedented time? His unprecedented time, his use of it there in that clip.
You know, as much as I appreciate some of the things that Bernie Sanders has brought to the world, particularly around economic justice, I think the way that this word is operating here is one of my fears about the way that I think this word is utilized, which is to say let me be crass for a minute, apologies, but some shit is going down for some white people that hasn't gone down with some white people in a long time. Just to kind of, some things are happening to white people that are not good, that haven't happened to white people in a little while. And so now we have to call it unprecedented to get your attention because some stuff's happening that hasn't happened in a while.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that, you know, it's a rallying cry for sure. He's definitely using it to excite people. But it's also within his affect, right? Just by observing his demeanor, there's almost contained within his affect this real sense of urgency that he has, that he's possessing, because within his own white male psyche, he believes what he's saying, because this is the first time, basically, him saying, you know, this is the first time in American history or something like that. That's not really what it is. This is the first time in his life as a white male.
Right.
He is seeing some of the things that he's seeing, and he's alarmed by it, because nothing in history, nothing within his version of history, the versions of history that he's been taught, has prepared him for, has ever revealed to him that this country is a fascist country. It's evil in nature. Everything has been set up for Bernie Sanders in terms of white psychology, his orientation to America or the U.S. It's been set up in the affirmative.
Yeah, that's right. And it would have been easier, or I guess more accurate, for him to say this is the first time in my lifetime, but that doesn't contain the kind of urgency that saying unprecedented. It doesn't give you the kind of power. And I also thinking about him as an authority figure. So when white folks see other white folks who are first old, male, heterosexual, and in a position of power, as he is, and has a popularity, they take what he says as if it's factual without any question. There's almost no, unless you're of the other political party, and then you don't believe anything he says. But if you're a generally moderate to liberal American white person, you take Bernie Sanders as an authority. And so when he says unprecedented, you're just like, yeah, this is unprecedented. You start walking around your house talking to your children and to your spouse, and you're saying, yeah, isn't this, it's unprecedented. This is unprecedented, And what you're not saying is, oh yeah, we've been doing this shit for a long damn time. And people who look like me have been doing this shit for a long damn time. And now they're doing it again, and I don't like it. Instead of saying that, right? And instead of being able to excavate as you said, the fascist roots of American democracy itself, right? That's like, no, we've not been. And that's why it kind of goes back to those folks who say, this is not America. This is not who we are. Right. I know you've heard that.
Right. So let's look at one of the unprecedented events that's happening this week.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to share a quick clip of the unprecedented event going on today in America today. And then we're going to just kind of break down for you how and why there's nothing unprecedented about this at all. So hold tight. Here we go.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, we do have breaking news in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, minutes ago, literally, releasing emails that they say were written by Jeffrey Epstein that explicitly, specifically mention Donald Trump by name and in context that we really haven't heard before. Let's get right to Caitlin Collins, who's got this reporting. Caitlin, what are you learning?
Yeah, John, these are emails that show Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times in private correspondence that he had with people, including Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously his longtime associate and accomplice, and also the author Michael Wolff, in a time span of about the last 15 years or so in these emails. Now, these are coming out from the House Oversight Committee. They had issued a bipartisan subpoena to Jeffrey Epstein's estate, John, as you know, earlier this year. And so they've gotten their hands on a trove of documents. And these are emails that included Jeffrey Epstein on them. They were sent either to him or from him that mentioned Donald Trump before he was in office and also while he was in office during his first term. And I want to walk you through these emails of what exactly we are reading in Jeffrey Epstein's own words in these emails that have been released by the House Oversight Committee.
All right. So enough of that. What is unprecedented, or what is breaking news about a white male as a U.S. president engaging in sexual assault or grape? What's breaking news about that? The fact that he has an association with a well-known pedophile who facilitated other, rich, powerful, predominantly white, well-known, billionaires also engaging in acts of sexual violence or pedophilia. What is breaking news about this?
What is unprecedented about it? I mean, we knew this was happening. We knew about the friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. We knew who Jeffrey Epstein was when people elected Donald Trump to the presidency. We also knew a bunch of other things that Donald Trump had done and has been charged with and tried and charged and convicted with, as well as the comments about the Hollywood Planet Hollywood tapes, or what was that? Hollywood?
That's Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah, Planet Hollywood's a different place. But yeah, so we knew all that. So there's nothing breaking about this. It's also not unprecedented. And this is where people are like, this mass kind of pedophilia that we're uncovering through Jeffrey Epstein and its relationship to political figures and stars and people in the high rankings of American society, particularly white men, is not unprecedented in American history. It has happened many, many different times. And it's a part of us. It's symptomatic of whiteness. It's a symptomatic of a much deeper disease.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. I've been talking about, here recently, how it is neurobiological rooted in epigenetics based on the environment that white people have been in for hundreds of years now, right? Environmental influence phase one. You've got, the whole the whole period of European colonialism under English rule is rooted. I mean, it's total depravity. It's total crazed depravity, where people are implementing laws that essentially say that, white males can do whatever they want. They can murder with impunity. They can engage in pedophile acts. I think when we go back and we look at and understand the history behind, hypersexualization and legalized sexual violence, and understand, for example, something that, you've heard me speak about, the way that white men in England set laws that set the age of age for marriage for young girls at 12 years old back in Westminster, England, and how those laws mapped over into the United States context once the U.S. formed as a country, as a nation. And then also how, young girls as young as 10 years old, in some cases, if they were sexually assaulted, if they were raped, it was not considered sexual assault or rape or ravishment, as they highlighted in the language of the law. It was not considered ravishment or a violation of any sort if that young girl was 10 years or older. And so I just think it's important to call into question the mindset of people who, in any period throughout history into the present day, who thought that these things were okay, right? And I think when we talk about the misuse and overuse of this word, unprecedented, it's rooted in either a total oblivion, people who are totally oblivious to history, or whose orientation around how they understand historical events and happenings is altered or in a way, or has been set in a way that does not allow them to have the proper orientation about how they understand history. For example, we use the phrase or sometimes the labels are forefathers, men of great valor, upstanding individual leaders, right? We don't say that the United States of America was founded by pimps, pedophiles, rapists, right? We don't say that. We say forefathers. And by improperly framing or framing history and the language that we use and in kind of either the absence of facts or the manipulation of information, and we by that misinformation or misinterpretation, we then mislabel or do not label properly. These types of conversations, we do a disservice to ourselves. We do a disservice to everyone in the community and everyone in our society.
Yeah, the history of America itself, and this term founding fathers, as you mentioned, comes from the fact that American history is in and of itself revisionist history from the beginning, because it's revising what's really happening to glorify those who are in charge. And those who are in charge happen to be white landholding males who are often engaged in raping people and engaged in horrific behaviors. I mean, think about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, right? 10 of the first 12 presidents were enslavers, 8 of them were enslavers while in office. What do you think they were doing on those plantations? This is documented. This is not, we don't have to, this is not conjecture. This is documented behavior. We have DNA tests, we have excavations, archaeology, all sorts of history here that we can draw upon. These founding fathers were engaged in rape. And so when you say that this is unprecedented for Donald Trump, you deny and disassociate him from the history that makes him make sense.
That's right.
Right?
That's
it helps us understand him.
And not only him, but all of the people who share the same value set and value system that he idolizes, that he represents.
Right, that women are disposable, right, and that children are sexual objects.
Yes, and not only does it water down history, but it's a total distortion. It's a total distortion of history. It's not true at all. And I want to take it a step further before I share this next clip. But when we think about what the institution of legalized, economized enslavement was, it was a sex trafficking ring of sorts. And all you have to do, for example, like I did, and if you read my book, especially in the third chapter of Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, I talk about and I quote from slave narratives where you've got, for the children of formerly enslaved people themselves talking about how they observed plantation owners rewarding their parents for having twins, for having triplets, how they were, given trophies, so to speak, or things that represented recognition for being able to reproduce fast, and how their parents, for example, consisted of young Black girls and Black women who would be locked in cabins with Black men, and Black men told to have their pick or to take their pick. We're talking about rape for profit. And that's how Donald Trump has ascended. That's why Donald Trump exists. That's how he exists. That's how he's ascended to the position of prominence that he's in, because his sexual proclivities, his hypersexual proclivities, his perverted sexual proclivities have been overlooked. But not only that, they've been covered up, and they've been covered up by men who share his same behavior, the way that he computes his beliefs. Right. That, to your point, not only are women disposable, but before we dispose of them, we can use them for our convenience in any way necessary, but for any means, by any means necessary. We can just walk all over, misuse, abuse, mistreat, degrade, assault women, because that is the legacy of this country.
Right. That's right. And it's not that far. It's not like there's a jump from the founding fathers, the founding rapists, to Donald Trump, and there's nothing in between, right? Like it's been happening over and over again. And I just think about Warren Harding, had a mistress who he was 31 years older than, who was a teenager named Nam Britton when he started a relationship with her, started sexually assaulting her. And brought her into the White House. They'd have sex in the closet. It's very well documented. You can go read about it. This is not ancient history here.
Not at all.
This has been happening.
Absolutely. President Warren Harding. And, there are so many others, right? You mentioned Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. But, one of the things that I found was when I started looking at court transcripts and court records, and how there were Black women and Black men who were represented in jury trials throughout the 19th and the 20th centuries, and the courts were in various states essentially ruling that due to a white cognitive distorted mindset that Black people were hypersexualized creatures, that Black women and young girls essentially couldn't be violated. They couldn't be, victims of pedophilia or victims of rape because they were hypersexual, or they are hypersexual creatures and beings. And how that mindset in and of itself is rooted in a cognitive, distorted, and perverted belief system based on, very ill interpretations of people, of other human beings, and how that has remained a part of this society. Essentially, white people deciding who can and can't be raped or assaulted.
Right. So it's demonic, diabolical.
It absolutely is. And so I'm going to share an additional clip where we hear from Donald Trump himself when he's confronted back in 2022 in the E. Jean Carroll deposition.
You say, and again, this has become very famous in this video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the you can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
And
so let's unpack. Let's do a little bit of discourse analysis, right? Let's unpack what he's saying and also what he's not saying. I'll give it over to you first.
I can't unhear the fortunately or unfortunately line. I think because it's a deposition and because of who he is, there's so much that he's saying that you won't hear others say when they describe this. There will be a lot more lying, a lot more denial. So there's a lot here he's just saying out loud. Yeah, no, historically, this has been accurate. He says stars, but what he means is white men. That's a new term for white men I hadn't heard before. Stars.
Yeah.
Stars. Yeah. White men in power. And then he just says, fortunately or unfortunately. Why wouldn't you just say unfortunately? I mean, it's so revealing.
It is, because it's fortunate for him, and he wants to make sure that his followers, particularly those who are male, people who are like him, that he vindicates them. Right. This is the behavior that we've been allowed to engage in, that we've authorized ourselves to be able to engage in for decades, for hundreds of years, without consequence and really without fail. Even when we think about when there are convictions and the length of the sentences that people receive, that offenders receive when they are sentenced for sexual violence or pedophilia, it's not like they get life sentences in most cases, or in many cases. They may be given a term, right? And so that in and of itself shows how within our society, within our values in this society, we don't really take the violations of people who have been sexually assaulted. We don't take it seriously, and particularly that of those of girls and women, because we don't value girls and women in this society.
Right.
And he says we've been engaged in this behavior for 1 million years. So we are socialized to do this. We're socialized to do it. We're authorized to do it. We cover up each other.
Society is structured to allow us.
Yes.
And to get away with it.
Please go ahead, expand on that.
Well, I was just, and I want to add, as a pastor here and as a theologian, I think it's important to go ahead and add the church's disgusting role and a long legacy here. Let's just think in our lifetimes of the sexual scandals that have happened in the church. The biggest, of course, is the Catholic Church abuse scandal, right? And then you tie that to the epidemic within the Southern Baptist and Evangelical Church in the South and around the country of youth pastors and pastors being charged with sexual assault, congregations covering it up, scandals breaking out, and victims having to be re-traumatized because there's no rules in these churches that can hold these folks accountable. And it's just scandal after scandal after scandal. Not to mention, and I want to add this one specifically because it's very important. Evangelical figures who have been on the tour around the country promoting hatred towards LGBTQ folks, who then get caught engaged in their own LGBTQ relationships. And so I want to tie that to this, what you talk about is this projection that is happening amongst particularly white Christians, white Catholic Christians, white Southern Baptist Christians, white evangelical Christian pastors who are projecting this, I would say, hyper fundamentalist version of sexuality. You know, it's like puritanical Victorian sexual mores mixed with some very poorly interpreted biblical passages to say that no one should ever have fun anywhere sexually except in the marriage bed. But in reality, that projection, that false theological hyper fundamental view of sex is just a facade to cover the white supremacist violence that is going on behind that. And so you'll find that the most hyper fundamentalists around sex happen to be the places and the locations and the churches and the pastors who are also engaged in the most predacious behavior sexually. And I think we have to reckon with that. No one is talking about how the theology itself masks what's underneath it. All this anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage, anti-LGBTQ, anti-sex before marriage, anti-women's empowerment, heteropatriarchal white behavior and theology is masking a community of people engaged in predatory behavior towards women and children.
And it's always been that way. But this society and the people in power have always masked it or tried to make it seem like it's something different. I wasn't going to go here, Pastor Boswell, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how these types of behaviors and the pursuit of whiteness, the pursuit of white supremacy or white nationalism is an extension of Christian supremacy that goes back 600 years, 600 plus years. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that or not, but my reason for bringing this up is because the whole framework of white maleness is rooted in narcissism, which is rooted in a self-concept of oneself of being like the most supreme being and a great person, almost like a heroic figure, while going out to conquer and to venerate and destroy others that they don't consider like them. And that how whiteness and white supremacy then and identification within whiteness is rooted in an entire psychological perversion and this ability to be able to do harm to other human beings while maintaining that, I'm doing this for my survival. I'm doing this because they need to be civilized. I'm doing this because they're not human. All of these variables, and these variables are still contained within the white psychological and theological identity structure, which is why then you have someone like Donald Trump, who is a malignant narcissist, but I would argue that malignant narcissism is a trait of the collective white race based on the delusions that white people themselves live within. It is not to say that it only impacts them, because it also impacts those of us who are socialized within the culture of whiteness and or white supremacy. But we can see so clearly, right, the rejection that anything's wrong. Always there's a rejection and this impulse to defend against the most vile, tragic behavior. There's never any desire to take any accountability or care for people or want to see people well. And so we have a cultural phenomenon that is rooted in malignant narcissism, empathy suppression, no empathy. So it is a culture that is ruled, that has been constructed and reinforced and ruled by sociopaths who have engaged in the most psychopathic destructive behavior by erecting institutions, practices, and processes that target people that they see as deviant or that they see as being different or other.
Mm. Yeah, we could go for another 30, 40 minutes on this, but I'll try to make it as quickly as I can to tie some things together. But one of the things that I talk about is that Christian supremacy, and by that I mean the idea that Christians are somehow better, smarter, have the truth, and others don't, is the origin of European supremacy, Anglo-Saxon supremacy, and then later white supremacy. And so one of the things I love about your work, Dante, is that you're not afraid, as a lot of anti-racist scholars and leaders, I think, are often afraid or ignore the theological heart of whiteness, the theological origins of whiteness, the spiritual origins of it. You tackle it head on, and that's part of what my work does, is tries to get at the roots of this in Christian supremacy, which is a delusion. It's the idea that if you're a Christian, you're better than other people just because you're a Christian. And so that early supremacy that is manufactured in relationship to Jewish people and manufactured in relationship to the Roman Empire, which eventually leads to Christians taking over the Roman Empire and aligning themselves with empire and imperialism and colonialism. That is the origin of what becomes all these different forms of supremacy throughout Western and European culture, and leads us all the way to white supremacy today. The continued delusion that white people, no longer, even if they're Christian anymore, doesn't really even matter what their religious tradition is, that white people are superior. And white supremacy itself is rooted back in this early form of Christian supremacy that we see as early as the 2nd century, developing in Christian theological discourse over and against Jewish people, over and against non-Christian folks in Greece and Rome and other places. And so this is what justifies this is why, out of that supremacy, it really just completely tarnishes Christianity. It completely remakes it in a monstrous image. And all of European Christianity, for the most part, we have some, small pockets of communities that turn against this. But for the most part, the majority of European Christianity is that monstrous version of Christianity that uses its faith, uses its religion, simply and primarily as a justification and a legitimation for greed and violence and power and domination.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for breaking that down. And we will unpack it more potentially in some subsequent episodes. But anyway, we wanted to get on here very quickly. Yeah. We're a little bit over, but it's all good. But then, we want to get on here and really tackle this whole idea that around basically media sensationalism,
right?
That things are breaking or unprecedented. They're not. These things have happened before, and I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's our lack of awareness around factual data, factual historical facts, information, and or the ways that we've been oriented to historical information has either been inaccurate, manipulated, it's been sanitized. So there's nothing unprecedented today. There's nothing breaking. And so we're going to, in each of these times, in each of these episodes or series sections that we do, really work to debunk and to also share historical information that proves why we're not in any type of unique moment at all whatsoever. So I want to say thank you everyone who tuned in today, who took time to watch. Pastor Boswell, did you want to offer any last closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to offer one closing thought, that when folks hear you, Dante, root things historically in colonialism or in the early practices of plantation slavery in America, it's important for them to make the connections all the way to today and to not imagine that Dante says, oh, I want you to know about this law. And then we all think, well, that law, nobody practices that law anymore. Child marriage is still legal in 34 states in America. There's a great Rolling Stone piece about this that we can drop y'all so you can read about it. So if you think the age of consent and the predacious behavior, the predacious sexual behavior and perverted sexual behavior did not have an impact on your life, you're probably living in a state right now where child marriage is legal. And so you're living in the white supremacy that is the legacy of that colonial law that Dante has shown you. And so I just want to make sure you understand that when Dante is sharing something like that from history, that it's not gone away. And that's why we come on to try to talk about how there's nothing unprecedented.
That's right. And I think what's so profound about what you just mentioned is that child marriage is legal in 34 states because white men want it to be legal. Otherwise, it would be illegal because white men run the institutions. They run the legal system.
They wrote the laws for all those states.
Right. They write, enforce, or put the people in positions that they want to be in those positions, even if they are non-white people. But white people control who gets where in this society. And so the fact that there are no laws outlawing child marriage is not coincidental. It's not a mistake.
Right.
It is very purposeful. So thank you again, Ben.
Thank you,
I appreciate you so much
for doing this with you. Yeah.
And I look forward to being with you next time.